Hello, my name is Murray Collins, and this is the Space Intelligence Nature-Based Solutions podcast. First off, I'm going to say thank you to Snezana for finding this fantastic studio here in Jakarta. Amazing, isn't it? These lovely, lovely seats. I think this suits us. Back in the room with Stuart Clenaghan. How are you, Stuart?
I'm excited. What a great occasion.
It is. It's a great location. Great to be back here. We have two new guests. Actually, we've got several new guests who we're going to meet today. But starting off, we have Nunuk-san.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, very good.
Very, very good.
Very good. And a bit nervous, but...
You're a bit nervous. He's fine. There's no reason to be nervous. Hopefully, we're going to be very nice. And I think it's a very interesting topic of conversation. And we're also joined by Yani Septiani. How are you, Yani?
I'm good, thank you.
Very good. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, me too.
And you're wearing your outfit, you said, from Aceh in northern Sumatra.
Yeah, you like it?
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, why don't we start off? Stuart's already introduced himself in a previous podcast. So why don't we start off with Mrs. Nunuk? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, actually, I'm on behalf of one company and who interest in more in a carbon market. So try to start learning about the carbon. Of course, this is new for me because before I work in more in a emitter in a chemical field. So it's very interesting for the carbon for our future from now on. Actually, yeah, interesting. So why here I want to represent of the company who invests more in a carbon market, especially in Indonesia.
Yeah, particularly here in Indonesia and
Yes.
carbon in forests in particular, or are you interested in all forms of carbon emissions reduction?
Both of them actually interesting for me in the forest and also the carbon emission reduction.
Okay.
Yeah, because of course before I related in more in the industrial. Yeah, so every industry start interesting to reduce their emission.
Yes. Okay, that's a very interesting point, actually. I think we should come on to. But Yani, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
So you know my name, right? Yani. Actually, has already worked in the forestry sector more than 20 years. So that's why I also working with the government. And now we try to work together with the private sector because, you know, the role of the private sector in the carbon project in Indonesia is very, very important.
Okay, thank you very much. And I just realised, actually, Stuart, somebody could watch this podcast in isolation and say they might not have had the pleasure of your introduction. So would you give an overview of your good self?
Very quickly, I have grey hair. I've been around a long time. My career has really been in two parts. The first was in banking, capital markets, and the second part, 20 years now, in carbon and sustainability finance. My expertise actually is not in Indonesia, it's in Peru, but my eyes are really opened here. This week we see a lot of very exciting entrepreneurial-driven Indonesian companies seeing the opportunity here for nature-based carbon capture and storage. And at the same time, we've seen in Asia, particularly from Japan, a huge amount of interest in participating in trade in carbon. So I think we have the dynamics here to create a really exciting new industry of nature-based carbon capture and storage in Indonesia.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Erudite as ever. That was very, very good. So let's think about Indonesia, and I'm really interested, Mrs. Nunuk. You've come from the chemical sector.
Yes.
But you're now looking at how you can build a business and how you can play a role in decarbonisation in Indonesia. And you said something very interesting, that this is all about decarbonising industry and developing things like nature-based solutions to reduce emissions and to store carbon. Why did you decide to come away from chemicals industry and come into this decarbonisation world?
Yeah, you know that everybody understand that now global warming in the world, so everybody concerned about this issue. Especially Indonesia is the one of the biggest forest owner, right, in the world. So, and still in Indonesia, of course, we are in a developing country. We still want to be in a advance, not only developing, but to be in a. We still want to not reducing the industrial, but we want to convert into the carbon based on our forest. Yes. So based on our relation with the factory or industrial, we concern about also in to offset, not offset, but to replace this emission into the carbon. Right now, we together with my expert Bu Yani and also PT Sam want to support this carbon issue in Indonesia.
And clearly it's very, very hard because you go around in Indonesia, in Jakarta, there's clearly a lot of money. There's a lot of development. There's a lot of nice cars, lots of big offices. But in the rest of Indonesia, in the rural areas, obviously there's a lot of poverty as well. So still a lot of development. But I think nature-based solutions in particular provide an opportunity to create jobs in rural areas. I mean, Yani, is that something that you've seen, the creation of like RED projects, reforestation projects? You've seen an opportunity to give people jobs and create economic development?
Yeah, yes, of course. Actually, in Indonesia, have the very good modality, to be the industrial carbon project maybe in Asia, because as you know that the Indonesian government also has the NDC target until 2050, and in the same times the government also has a new initiative with the Polu Net Sink program until 2030 to achieve of the 140 million ton CO2 until 2030 from the forest and other land use. And beside that, now we have also new regulation related with the economic value of the carbon. And under this regulation, there is one of the instrument is the carbon trading. This one is for Indonesia, the emission reduction is not only the instrument to reduce of the emission, but also to bring of the new investment to develop of the low economy development. And as you mentioned, that it will also create of the labor absorption and as well as the transfer technology, and at the end will contribute to the country GDP, right?
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, there's a really interesting tension here. Stuart, I'd love to bring you in from the perspective of somebody who's been in capital markets and really sees the flows of international trade. There's a tension between, as Mrs. Nunuk says, needing economic development. So obviously Indonesia aspires to keep developing its industry, but has to reduce the energy intensity of that. Nature-based solutions and Polu Net Sink provides an opportunity to accelerate decarbonisation and even create an exportable, we'll call it commodity, an intangible commodity, carbon credits. How do you see this tension between the need for economic development with the development of the forest carbon sector here in Indonesia?
So really interesting, but some very clear signals coming from the new administration here in Indonesia. And I'm not an expert. I'm a foreigner coming to Indonesia, but I'm impressed with the energy, and I'm also impressed with the targets. So just a couple of things. So for people who haven't been following the new administration, it's really clear people want to see GDP growth rise from an already impressive 5% over the last 20 years, each year, to 8%. The second is the real commitment of this administration to alleviating poverty and creating growth and jobs in the rural sector. Something like 27% of people in Indonesia are engaged directly in the rural sector. It produces, I think, less than 15% of GDP. So clearly there's a mismatch between economic activity and wealth creation and the amount of people dressed in that sector. And of course, nature-based solutions are rural economy jobs. So I think that the real clear message on economic growth, creating rural employment, together with Indonesia's recognition that actually it can be a net carbon sink by 2030 to the tune of 140 million tons of emission reductions a year, I think is incredibly strong signals to the market. What's happening, we've met this week, we've met with corporations who want to engage in this business, foreign corporations, particularly Japanese corporations who want to engage with Indonesia in this sector. We've met with government, and it seems that people are very fired up and ready to go. And we've also, I think, people understand the steps that need to be taken, and there's an energy behind that. And in particular, one of the things we've been talking about, Murray, this week is providing independent measurement of, or measurement, reporting and verification of net carbon effects. So there's an opportunity, of course, for space intelligence to engage here, but I think it's really clear that people have the message now. And it's really, the markets are opening, and I think Indonesia's open for business. So it's very exciting.
Thank you, Stuart. And of course, we met yesterday a team in the Ministry of Forestry who are actively working on mangrove restoration. So they're seeing mangrove restoration as really the next wave of activity at scale in Indonesia. And when, Stuart, you and I have been in Singapore, we've seen from the big corporates that there's a strong demand for mangrove restoration. It's clearly the in vogue ecosystem to restore. Maybe, Yani, could you say something about the pressures that are on mangroves? There's been a lot of clearance for mangroves in Indonesia because of agriculture, aquaculture, and what do you think the potential is to restore mangroves here in Indonesia?
Yeah, as you know, that Indonesia also has a target for the restoration of the mangrove until actually 2030 is the very huge area, is a 600,000 hectare, right? And as we discussed yesterday, that some of the development partner also try to support of the Indonesia for to achieve of the mangrove restoration is like World Bank and also KfW. As my experience, yeah, now the attention to to restore of the mangrove here from the Indonesian stakeholder is very, very high, and also the pressure to the mangrove mangrove natural forest is also very high. For example, in Sumatra, the threat of to the mangrove is because of the expansion of the mangrove to become the palm oil, and also in East Kalimantan, the pressure is from the expansion of the aquaculture. Maybe you know, and also in Papua, yeah, it's very interesting because the pressure in the Papua is from the development. So that's why the intervention to support of the mangrove mangrove protection is different. It depends of the island because Indonesia is very huge.
So there's some different drivers of the loss of these ecosystems. But
and you know, one of the challenge in the mangrove restoration is we cannot generalize of the intervention.
Yep.
Because it should be based on the local,
local conditions.
The local
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing that now the Indonesia also will develop of the low carbon from the mangrove. So yeah, we still need support, yeah, especially for the monitoring of the carbon restoration and so on, because as we discussed yesterday, that the mangrove area is not in the big area in the one landscape, but it's
dotted around.
Yes, like this.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's fragmented. So
fragmented, right.
But then I think there were some key messages we discussed yesterday, and I think they come out in all of our conversations. There's rehabilitation works and restoration of mangroves, but you also have to do conservation
protection of
mangrove
the
protection.
mangrove. Yes.
So we have to do both. And I
Yes.
think this has been a feature of many of our conversations that people are saying, well, we're only going to do removals.
Yeah.
This is from the buyers and investors because they feel confident that you can see the results. But it's really critical that we also conserve remaining forests as well and remaining mangroves. If we're going to hit our climate targets, we're still losing about 1% of tropical forests each year. It's really silly to say we're just going to focus on removals. We have to do both. We have to conserve forests and restore them. Stuart, you mentioned in terms of the trade dynamics, a particular demand from Japan. I know both of your careers, and Mrs. Nunuk in particular, you've had some experience working with Japanese companies. How is the relationship between Japan and Indonesian businesses? Is there quite a strong connection?
Between, as you know, the Japanese and Indonesians, since before Indonesia independent, actually, Japan's already doing in Indonesia for the cotton business. And then until now, it's getting stronger with we have like an association between Indonesia and Japan. Yeah, and also they're also concerned with this green as already discussed for since long time actually. Japan's already concerned and also supporting by the Indonesian government.
So quite a strong relationship between the two countries. Stuart, something that you really see as the dynamic of Asia, these industrialized northern Asian countries, plus South Korea, investing in particular in Indonesia. Is this reinforcing your view?
100%. I mean, Japan has a real, and South Korea both have real problems. They're heavily reliant on fossil fuels. They have global industries. They have to participate in global markets. Buyers of products, Japanese products, want to see responsible production. They want to see, where possible, carbon neutral production. Japan can only achieve that at scale by cooperating with other countries like Indonesia, which can produce carbon credits, carbon offsets, if you like, from nature-based carbon capture and storage. So the opportunity is very big. And I noticed in our hotel that maybe a third of the people there are Japanese. So it's clear that there's a lot of interaction between Japan and Jakarta and Indonesia more generally. If I look out my window, I can see a number of Japanese companies highlighted on buildings here as well. So it's the relationship seems very obvious. It's very clear that there's lots of business to do.
So Stuart, you articulated very well these new trade dynamics, investment into Indonesia, in particular from big Japanese corporates, also this big demand for carbon credits. I think we'd like to see a world where 100% of all industrial emissions are being offset. This creates this massive demand for carbon credits, particularly from nature-based solutions, and that means restoring and conserving Indonesia's forests. This is a world I would love to see. Massive opportunity, therefore, for Indonesia. But what are the challenges for Indonesia to be able to achieve that?
Yeah, actually everybody talk about the regulation, right? But I know that now the government will improve of this regulation to accelerate of the carbon trading implementation in Indonesia. And other challenge is the collaboration. Collaboration is very important, not only the government with the private sector, but also collaboration with the financial institution. So we have to, encourage of the for the strong collaboration for these three parties, and other is technology support, because we still need the technology, especially for the MRV process system, to make the investor is confident with the high integrity carbon in Indonesia. And other is the expansion of the obligation for the industrial sector. For example, Nunuk said that now for the industrial sector in Indonesia, there is no obligation yet to involve in the emission reduction. So we need to, to encourage, to include also for the industrial sector, but not only industrial, but also for example, transportation. And other challenge is related with the awareness, especially the awareness from the business actors in Indonesia that the carbon trading is the tool to participate in the emission reduction in the future. Yeah, that's all.
So with regards to technology, one of the main reasons I'm here for space intelligence in Indonesia is obviously because that's what we provide. We are increasingly seen as a trust layer to provide independent assessment of the changes that are happening in the world's forests, particularly in the context of the carbon market, but also under other regulatory regimes like the EU's deforestation regulation. Really what we see is as this market develops, there's an absolutely critical need for independent third parties to provide confidence about the integrity of carbon credits and to give confidence to buyers that any investments that they make are yielding real results. So I think we have a strong role to play.
Yes.
But as you say, technology is only one part of the solution. We need functioning markets, which are allowing people to invest into forest carbon effectively through the purchase of carbon credits. Stuart, you're an expert in the development of markets, and we've seen something of the evolving market infrastructure here. But given that if you take a look at the IPCC pathways, we need to be able to reduce and stop deforestation in only 4.5 years. Do you think we're moving fast enough to develop those markets?
Look, by nature, I'm an optimist, but I'm going to answer that question, no. We need to move faster, clearly. But I think there's a couple of things I'd say about markets. The first is the world can look to the EU and its emission allowance trading market as an example of how to achieve real reductions in emissions and motivate companies to invest in low carbon technologies. The second, and I think incredibly important achievement, has been the agreement around Article 6 trading. In other words, trading between countries of carbon credits and properly accounting for those. That, to my mind, really opens up huge potential investment flows. I think it's something which the capital markets, the bond markets in particular, can help by financing large-scale, I'm talking about billions of dollars worth of investment transactions in that marketplace. And I think it gives the currency, if you like, for promoting growth through trade between countries. I mean, Japan could buy carbon credits from Indonesia. I'm certain Japan would like to sell Indonesia something, maybe high technology, low carbon technologies, possibly in hydrogen or in low carbon transport and so forth as well. So I think decarbonization is actually a way for economies to grow. It's not necessarily a cost. It's an opportunity to create rural jobs. It's an opportunity for countries like Indonesia to sell in international markets. And it's an opportunity to reinforce existing trade relationships and play to the strength. You know, Indonesia has huge strength in nature-based carbon capture and storage. It's an industry which at the moment is fragmented, but it's waiting to happen. It's a very big opportunity, I think, for this country.
I mean, that's a very interesting point. Just to, probably for the purposes of teasing it out, Mrs. Nunuk said, we need to continue with industrialization. We're a developing country. There's a lot of poverty. Yani said that nature-based solutions gives one opportunity for rural economic development because these projects deliver great benefits to local communities in remote areas. But you're saying critically that this trade relationship with, for instance, Japan, is going to accelerate decarbonization of industry, which Mrs. Nunuk is describing through technology transfer. So the existing high energy intensity industry is going to be a net recipient of benefits from technology transfer. Is that right?
That's right. I think that you'll hear other people with that message. But my guess is it's over the course of the next 12 or 24 months, you'll really get this dialogue going in the markets. People will understand the opportunity for low carbon economic growth. which is what we're talking about here in Indonesia, and the benefits of international trade to accelerate that. So I think it's a really interesting opportunity. Murray, you and I met with a large bank in Singapore. I think they got it. And I think that more and more people now will be talking about the opportunity rather than the cost of getting this done.
Well, definitely, Mrs. Nunuk, you see the opportunity because you've come from the chemicals industry and now you're looking at a new wave of economic development for the future of Indonesia, including in carbon reduction. How optimistic do you feel about the next 2 or 3 years of Indonesian low carbon growth?
Yeah, as of course this everybody, I mean, some industry try best to change from this low emission, like now they start to produce based on bio. Then but as Ms. Yani mentioned, that this all depend on the government regulation. So of course need the government support to change this industry to be more in a low carbon low emission.
Okay, and Yani, how optimistic do you feel? Obviously, you said regulation is somewhat of a challenge, but do you still feel optimistic that Indonesia is going in the right direction for low carbon growth?
Yeah, of course. I need to be optimistic, right? Actually, now, based on the Paris Agreement, Article 6, I think this is the opening the door for the Indonesia to encourage of the private sector to finance of the, high integrity carbon measures and also support of the sustainable development as the environment and the social contribution of the private sector. And beside that, we also learn from the COP29 that now this is like the open for the non-state actor also to involve in the cross-border carbon trading, right? So I think the government also need to respond well for the to accelerate of the carbon trading implementation, and I believe that the government also has the same intention with us, and also to encourage of the private sector to achieve of the net zero emission.
Brilliant. So we need bigger, more well-developed liquid markets, which are able to drive more private capital into decarbonizing Indonesia's industry and driving nature-based solutions. Some challenges from regulation, but as Stuart says, we're seeing a lot of very, very positive signals from the government. And what we've heard this week in Jakarta, there are a lot of very, very positive signals, and the government seems really intent on developing that carbon market, particularly, as you say, with the opportunities which are being opened up under Article 6. Stuart, you're a great believer in Article 6 being really the game changer, with the voluntary carbon market being really, it's exciting in a way, but it's also very, very small. It addresses a tiny fragment of global emissions. For people who haven't heard you speak about Article 6 and the opportunity it presents, would you be able to summarize?
Yeah. So first of all, on the voluntary carbon market, clearly it's the leader, if you like, in terms of how to develop high quality or high integrity carbon credits. It's had a lot of attention over the last 3 or 4 years, and I think nearly all of the issues that people have found, particularly, for example, measuring the carbon outcomes of projects, have now been resolved. But it's a small market. It's $2 or $3 billion in size, and it covers probably less than 1% of all of the emissions that the world is currently creating. Article 6 actually ties in the very sincere commitments, I believe, that have been made by countries around the world after the Paris Agreement, articulated in their nationally determined contributions, where we can see in Indonesia's case they've actually strengthened the target for reducing emissions. So Article 6 really creates the way for countries to play to their strengths and cooperate with each other, by trading emission reductions. As I said earlier, Japan, very strong clearly in technology, low carbon technologies. Indonesia, very strong in its potential for nature-based carbon capture and storage. The two countries can and are collaborating with each other, and the mechanism for doing that is Article 6 carbon trading. So that's the reason I feel so enthused about it. The voluntary carbon market can only go so far. Beyond that, we have this, as I say, sincere commitment, I believe, on governments around the world to address climate change and play to their strengths. And as I say, I think it doesn't have to be a cost. This is something that can be a driver of trade, and I think that's the thing that's now recognised through that market.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Well, we've taken up a good amount of your time this morning. Really enjoyed speaking with you, and glad that you share that optimism about the future. I think Stuart and I are both irrepressible optimists anyway. Great that you share that optimism and that you're doing what you're doing to drive forward decarbonisation here in Indonesia. That's fantastic. Just before we wrap up, would you like to say anything else? Anything we haven't covered this morning that you would like to say to anybody who's interested about Indonesia's development and particularly nature-based solutions here?
So this is the last word from me. Actually, to create of the nature-based solution project in Indonesia, we need to concern about the one key issue is the community engagement, because this is the one of the key for the sustainability of the project. And secondly, I think the cooperation. So that's why, I really encourage of the cooperation. For example, like the local organization, local company, as Bu Nunu mentioned, with the SE as Space Intelligence as the international company to work together to support of the nature solution project in Indonesia. Yeah, that's all. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Well, confirming we are very much interested in supporting Indonesian high-quality projects there which support local communities 100%. This is Nunuk.
Yes. So I think everybody, of course, concerned on this carbon, but we deeply expect, of course, government support on this carbon issue.
Okay, thank you. Well, messages, I think, have gone out loud and clear. Stuart, I'm going to say that your Article 6 comments were your last words, unless you're desperately keen to add anything else.
I'm done. Look,
You're done.
Indonesia is an incredibly exciting place, I think, to do business, and that's my closing message. Everyone I've met is positive and engaged and understands the issues. So it's really clear that this is open for business.
So I think we're going to be back, right? And you like the food as well?
I do like the food, yeah.
Yeah, we both like the food very much. So I'm going to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Terima kasih atas waktu Anda, atas semua bantuan Anda. And we will finish there. And I'll say thanks very much for watching.